Tom Moore has been there all the way through it all, the good times, the bad times, the best of times, the worst of times. Sports columnist for the Bucks County Courier Times. See what I did there? And he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. I'm no writer, Tom, but I know you follow this team around enough to say you're not surprised by anything that happens with this team, are you?
Yeah, pretty much not, Mike. I know it. Kind of the 27 games heading into the after the All-Star break and trying to get some cohesion, figure out rotations, and now Simmons. It sounds like it's hard to say, but it might not be an injury, just a 1 or 2 game injury, just the way it sounds. And Tobias Harris, it's unclear on with him too. I mean, they have 3 winnable games this week. The Hawks at home tonight. I'm on my way to the game. They're at Cleveland Wednesday, and then they're home with the Knicks on Thursday. But, when you're down 2 or 3 starters, 2 starters, and you're still trying to figure out your 5th starter, basically you have Josh Richardson and you have Joel Embiid, and then after that, you need to sort of mix and match and figure out who's the point guard without Simmons, who's starting at the 3, who's starting at the 4. Glenn Robinson probably will start at the 3, but, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because tonight the Hawks are a pretty big team. Their power forward, John Collins, is 6'9". You could start Horford matchup-wise, but I don't think Brett Brown wants to do that because he really wants to establish Horford coming off the bench and get a regular rotation with him. Your backup power forward, Mike Scott, is just having an awful year. It's fallen out of the rotation. So, I don't know. He could go really small. There's a lot of moving parts here, and Mike Brown's got to figure it out, sooner rather than later.
Yeah, what do we know about Ben Simmons and what happened with the MRI and the possibility of length of time? I mean, I know you're probably en route to the stadium and might get more information, but is there anything that we do know other than the fact that he was getting an MRI today?
Yeah, I have not heard anything. You probably saw when he had the X-ray, he was upset or emotional after the X-ray, which makes you sound like it might not be just a mind thing, a couple of games. Maybe he was just really frustrated, upset. Maybe he was upset with the situation. Maybe he thought he shouldn't have come back and played. I don't know. But I would hope that we would have an answer, if not before the game, after the game, tonight.
Yep, and we know that we would imagine anyway that Alec Burks, do you think he will get the start and be the point guard in his absence, or do they try to run Neto out there as kind of a veteran ball handler? How do you see that if there's any stretch of time without Ben Simmons?
Yeah, you know what? With tonight, especially with Trey Burke, I think you probably want Richardson guarding him. He's your best wing defender, so you're probably going to have to go bigger. So either Alec Burks or Shake Milton would be my guess as a starting point guard. Robinson's the 3-man, but like I said, the 4-man, you could start Thibault and go really small. As I said, you could start Horford matchup-wise because the Hawks are big, but I don't think Brown wants to do that. Although, when you're down 2 or 3 starters, sometimes maybe you have to do what you don't necessarily want to do.
How's this team identity? And this is an ongoing question, Tom, but now with Ben out for the foreseeable future, what are they going to try and establish or work on, if anything, starting tonight?
Well, offensively, clearly they'll be more of a half-court team. Run and is very good at pushing the ball, getting in the open floor, attacking the rim, going downhill. I think without him, they will be more of a half-court team. Joel Embiid becomes even more important. And, I wrote something for Sunday that the season basically comes down to how Joel Embiid does. Well, that's even more important now without Simmons. Defensively, it really hurts them because Simmons can guard pretty much any position. You can put him on a 1, 2, 3, 4, even a 5, as long as it's not like a dominant, 7, huge center. He can guard most 5s. Now you don't have that, so you're more of a traditional defensive lineup. So as I said, if you started Neto tonight, I don't know who he guards. He'd have to guard a bigger guy. That's why I really don't think the fact that Milton and Burks are 5'6", they're a little bigger, a little more versatile. I think that, that makes more sense, and probably going forward.
So with Ben out, that's a lot of minutes, Tom, that this team has to account for. And I know it's a lot of, matchup based on who's going to get minutes and what the rotation looks like now. But you want to try and see if this team can go small ball here. Like, how would you divvy up the minutes between Matisse Thybulle and Shake Milton? Because they're pretty similar. I think Shake's been more consistent slightly on offense, and Mike Scott, as you said, has been struggling. You have Burks and Robinson. How do you make up for those Ben Simmons minutes now?
Yeah, well, whichever guy you start. I mean, Thybulle is not a point guard. So I would say he's not in the mix at the one. I think the point guard will be primarily Shake Milton and probably Burks. Brown will probably try Josh Richardson, who I think, he wants to give the first crack at being the backup point guard in the playoffs when the rotation, gets shorter. Thybulle, Korkmaz, Burks, Robinson, they're all wings, 2-3s. And yeah, you're right. I mean, they could go small ball a lot because they have so wings and because of the injuries. You just don't want to make sure if the other team is big, they don't pound the ball and you don't give up, too many easy baskets and, low post opportunities and so on. So I think it's kind of a work in progress, and, Brown will try something and then see how it works. If the Hawks tonight or the Cavaliers Wednesday or the Knicks Thursday, exploit things, you're going to have to make some changes. But I think Brown's going to really have to adapt, and kind of figure out what works and what doesn't work. How much is he still going to play? I assume he'll still play the two guys together some, but I would say that probably not a steady diet of it, with Horford and Embiid. There's a lot of things, it's not really what you want to be thinking about or worried about at this point. You want to be kind of fine-tuning your rotation. He had said the 7 to 10 games out of the All-Star break, you want to kind of figure things out, try some things, and that leaves 17 to 20 games down the stretch to kind of fine-tune and, be playoff ready. And that may not be the case. They may have to incorporate guys back in later and adjust the rotation, and things like that, which, right now, let's face it, they're fifth in the East. They're playing the Heat in the first round, and if they're fortunate enough to win that without home court advantage, you get the Bucks in the second round. That is not an ideal situation for this team at all. They really need to move up to number 3, but they're going to have a hard time catching the Celtics, even with a head-to-head tiebreaker based on the winning the season series 3-1. So they're in a tough spot here. You're not going to be able to catch the Raptors; they're too far ahead. But if they could somehow finish third, that would help on so many levels. Get a home court in the first round. Probably play the Pacers instead of the Heat, who would be a tough matchup.
Yeah, it really will. I mean, plenty of storylines there, but that's not ideal, like you said. So Al Horford, and Mike and I talked a little bit about this earlier. I said it's just frustrating, and it's not even like a fan frustration. It's just like a frustration that I imagine he's dealing with himself about his role and his play and how he fits. You're around this team all the time, Tom. How does Horford's mood feel like, and what do you think his relationship is right now with the locker room and Brett Brown?
I mean, he's disappointed, but I mean, look at the game Thursday night. The Sixers jumped out to a big lead. Horford comes in for Embiid 6 minutes into the game, and the Sixers get outscored by 24 points in the next 26 points, in the next 8 minutes with Horford on the floor. It wasn't all his fault because the bench did not play well and the Sixers' wings did not defend. I'm not blaming him. I'm not saying it was all him, but he's struggling too. I think he's lost a little confidence. He's trying to kind of figure out. I mean, he hadn't come off the bench since November of 2007, his rookie year. But I mean, you watch him play the other night when he was on Giannis at times. He just couldn't stay in front of Giannis. And you think back to 2 years ago in the playoffs when he did a really good job, not only on Embiid, but on Simmons. And you just don't know if it's all the miles, wear and tear at 34, if he's lost, a half a step. or what exactly is going on, but he just kind of looks like he's kind of aged in dog years. And, with 3 more years on his contract, and, the Sixers need him. I mean, even if it's as a backup point guard, he's their best option, clearly, backing up Embiid. They need him to contribute, and to give them 20 to 25 solid minutes a night, even if he's coming off the bench.
Yeah, Tom Moore's with us, by the way. He meant backup center, not
Yes.
point guard for Al Horford. But
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No, and look, I want to ask you, because I know you're a very level-headed guy and been around the team, and obviously Brown has taken a lot of heat, and I don't know, does it feel like irregardless of what happens, that Brown might be he has another year left on the deal. I mean, it just seems like there's such fatigue around this team. Like, I'm driving into work today, and I'm thinking people just judge this team night to minute almost, and it just seems so fatiguing that it just exhausting. I got to imagine that he's getting tired of it.
Yeah, I mean, when you have great expectations, which the Sixers do, eventually the bill is going to, come due. And a lot of people thought they could, go to the conference finals, had them penciled in facing the Bucks and had a chance to go to the NBA finals. It's not looking like that. It's not looking like that at all. Matter of fact, it's looking more like a first-round playoff exit than a trip to the conference finals, the way things are going right now. Someone will probably pay for that. That you can argue that, Elton Brand has given them, good players, but maybe it doesn't work. They don't fit. You could say that Brand is somewhat to blame, which is true, but it's also Brett Brown's job to figure it out and make it work. So I think Brown would be the first one to be held accountable, potentially at the end of the season. But I think then Brand is on the clock, and he needs to, make this work. And you're not having a hard time getting out of Al Horford's contract. That is a huge contract, $97 million guaranteed over 4 years, and up to $110, depending if the Sixers pick up the full 4th year.
Last thought from you. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The last thought I wanted to get from you was on, speaking of contracts, Tobias Harris signed a pretty big one this offseason. And I'm not saying he stinks. I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just wondering, in the end, are you going to be looking back at that and saying, was he really that guy in the big moments? Or, when you see a big game, do you feel his presence impact? Is his impact what they hoped it would be and need it to be?
His impact to me so far has been more in the first quarter than the fourth quarter. And the first quarter is important. He's gotten off to some good starts. But, somewhat, Mike, they're kind of a victim of the system to re-sign your own guy. If he left, they would have been screwed. So you kind of overpay him. He's not a $180 million 5-year guy, which is what he got. Yeah, is he their third best player? You could argue him or Josh Richardson. A 5-year, $180 million, that should be, theoretically, you would think, a star. And he's a very good player. He does some things well. But, you watch him, when he dribbles more than 3 or 4 times, he tends to get into trouble. So it's hard to do a lot of him in a pick and roll with him having the ball in his hands. He's a three-point shooter. He can back guys down if they're smaller guys a little bit. But I think they were hoping maybe he could pick up some of the slack from Jimmy Butler, be more of an initiator, be more of a, as I said, pick and roll guy, and it really hasn't worked out that way. He's a great teammate. They like him. He doesn't make waves. He makes Brett Brown's life easier than Jimmy Butler's would have been. But I think there's no question in the fourth quarter and down the stretch of games, you're much better with Jimmy Butler on your team, than Tobias Harris.
All right, tonight they've got Atlanta, Wednesday Cleveland, Thursday the Knicks. These are 3 teams that can make things feel a lot better. If they lose one of these 3, I'm sure the fatigue will only grow. Tom Moore, always kind enough to join us here, columnist, and you can check him out, on Twitter at Tom Moore Philly, and we'll try to get more info on Ben Simmons as well. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks a lot, guys.
You got it. Tom Moore, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.